What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Big Country. And as always, I'd like to give a big shout out to Han Solo, Tim, and Wayne, all of whom have shared Big Country with me. And also, Wayne has shared a lot of other music I haven't even begun dipping into yet. So, thank you both for the music and the patience. But yes, we're continuing through No Place Like Home, and the next track is Ships. In the plural. It is a single word title, those are tough to get a read on. Ships, as I understand it on a technical level, are watercraft that are on the larger size, meaning boats is typically a term used for smaller vessels, though I also understand that there is no universally agreed upon distinction between the two. Fair to say, in the modern space age, ship is also a term that is used related to vessels or craft that leave the planet Earth and go out into the solar system, but I would expect this meaning here to relate to ships on the water. Now, we've seen in the last couple albums especially, and even I think before that, that Big Country often have lyrics related to historical, cultural, and international events or processes, so maybe I'm inclined to see this title running in that direction, but again, there's no additional context, and obviously ships can be military ships, they can be passenger ships, they can be cargo ships, all of which may connect to different historical events or different conceptual meanings, perhaps with some crossover. Nevertheless, we'll see what I can pick up on a first listen. This is Big Country, the track is Ships, and it's from their 1991 album, No Place Like Home.
Look at it now, another used man, wearing the passing of his dignity with all the courage that he gained. He stood in the storm, carved out in stone. He said, I've won my honesty with pride in everything I've done. So where were you when my ship went down? Where were you when I wrecked aground? Where were you when I turned it around? Where were you when they burned me down? You see her now, all tired and worn. She never thought her life would come to be so cold or so alone. She walked in the light, fought bondage for love. She said, I cast off the chains that I was born with, but it never was enough. And where were you when my ship went down? Where were you when I wrecked aground? Where were you when I turned it around? Where were you when they burned me down? Silent souls washed up on the shore, left to walk the sands evermore, evermore. And I will you, and my ship went down. Look at you now, just chasing your life. Think like the savior of the planet, you're just trying to get by. Now you may walk the line, you may see it all through. I know you cry yourself to sleep at night, just wondering what to do. And where were you when my ship went down? Where were you when I wrecked aground? Where were you when I turned it around?
lovely tune. I have to say, maybe more than any other track in the last couple albums, this feels very far away sonically from the earliest material, for which I understand they are still most well known. But that's not a bad thing, and I like a band that has a lot of sonic diversity. But yeah, definitely this kind of almost like chamber music concerto type feel. We've got the piano, we've got some delicate violins giving support, and then Stuart's vocals, very rich and very sonorous in the foreground, but it's relatively minimal. It's, the big booming drums and even a prominent guitar are not to be found here. So yeah, it has a bit more of a like classical flavor to it, and then the slower ballad-like rhythms and stylings are in full effect here. And, as I'm listening, I'm thinking, okay, we're using phrases and visual images that are very much associated with ships and what happens to them, going down, running aground, sort of like reaching a point where the ground is like the water is not deep enough and you run aground and you can't move anymore no matter what your motors try to do. And then like burning down, turning around, like all these things, again, you can see in the context of ships because of the phrasing he's using in the title of the track. But I feel like this is maybe more metaphor and the idea of a life as a ship that is, out on the water of the world and time, and, sort of going in a certain way, going down, running aground, but then, finding the strength and the wherewithal to turn things around, but then maybe being attacked by others or, blamed or at the very least burned down, set aflame because of negative perceptions or attitudes or like external factors. It feels like this could be all metaphor. There was a point where I was thinking like, it could be a metaphor for a relationship between people, because he keeps saying, like, where were you when my ship went down, when I ran aground, when I turned it around, when I was burned down? So the you of the song I'm not quite sure of, and obviously that could be more than a single person. It could be even speaking to yourself. It could be like personification. But I did have the thought that maybe this is kind of on a one-to-one personal level. But my most likely or my best guess is that the ship is a metaphor for the person's life and or their trajectory in life. Nevertheless, I really did enjoy his vocals. They just have an elegance to them, and that's been a consistent thing throughout their catalog that I've heard so far. But I will say, the last couple albums, it's like his singing has been a bit different from the earlier albums, and other people have commented on that. But I think also like the music choices or the sonic stylings have allowed his voice to stand out a little bit more than in the earliest tracks. So again, I get it. Over a larger catalog or discography of a band's music, fans are going to have different preferences, not only for like sonic stylings, but maybe even vocal performance and so on. But I very much enjoyed this last like album and a half, even as it has moved a bit farther away from the earliest material, and Stuart's vocals really have stood out. So this is another example of that. Once again, big shout out to Han Solo, Tim, and to Wayne. Let me know what you think of this one. I'll see you next time. Peace.